Hey y'all, and welcome to another episode of Young Black Equestrians, the podcast. Today we talked to someone I was so excited to come across because she is me in a few years, hopefully. Dr. Lynn Criner, DVM. Dr. Lynn Criner has a hunter jumper background, and she currently owns Texas Equine and Pet veterinary practice. Dr. Criner talks to us about her path to becoming a veterinarian, her different experiences while owning a practice and working for someone else, and how she takes care of herself as a veterinarian. Her hunter jumper background has led her to have a better understanding of horse athletics and chiropractic care and things like that. So I'm super excited to talk to her today. Let us know what you think. Leave us a comment, rate, review, all those good things, and enjoy this episode. You are listening to Young Black Equestrians, the podcast, with your hosts, Aubriana Johnson and Caitlin Gooch. Thank you so much for taking some time at the end of your, I'm sure, busy day to talk to us for our podcast.
Yeah, well, it was one of the lighter days. It just happened to run late.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good. We have been starting our podcast off with just sharing something that we are thankful for today. So, okay. Lynn, if you want to tell us something that you are thankful for today.
Oh, absolutely. I'm thankful that my husband traveled safely back home. He was out of town for a week. Mm-hmm. And I'm thankful that we had an absolutely gorgeous day here in the Houston area. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thankful that I was able to help some clients today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Caitlin, what are you thankful for today?
Today has been an awesome day, and I'm thankful that my uncle, he celebrates his 65th birthday today. So I'm happy that he gets to celebrate another birthday, and our family that could come has came out, and we're celebrating his birthday right now.
Awesome. Let me see.
That's great.
You'd think I would have been prepared since I'm going last. I am thankful for all of the animals that I am watching currently, them just being healthy. I'm pet sitting at 2 farms, and I'm between my animals and the animals that I'm watching at the other 2 farms, I'm caring for 18 animals every day. So,
wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, I am thankful that everybody is healthy and nobody's injured, and I can just go and feed and do my thing and not have to worry about any drama. So I appreciate those animals for that. Lynn, if you would just tell us briefly about yourself, kind of where you're located and what your current discipline is as far as horses.
Okay, so I am located southwest of Houston. I'm in a small town called Meadville, mm-hmm. And it is between the Sugar Land, Richmond, Rosenberg area and Freeport, Texas. So, but it's easy access to basically the Houston metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. As far as the horses, I have done hunter jumpers exclusively for years. Have taken a break from that recently due to family. Mm-hmm. And my son, even though he loves his pony, his passion is gymnastics, and so that's where I spend most of my time when I'm not working.
Nice.
And when I can get on and ride, I'm trying to get horses or get my horses kind of in condition to jump them over big sticks if I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you get into horses in the first place?
So, I've been one of those people who has kind of always wanted to be around horses. I can't even remember when the first day that I saw a horse was. All I can remember is the fact that I wanted to participate in the horse world. Mm-hmm. Mostly I wanted, as a child, I want to ride it, I want to see it, can I touch it? So I would guess my first memory of really wanting to be around the horses was when I was 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And that was in the time where you went on the family Sunday drive through the countryside. Mm-hmm. And at that time, we lived in California, in the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area. So we would go on our Sunday drives, and we would drive through the Oakland Hills and up north. I'm not really sure exactly where we were. I was in the back seat. And we would see these hills covered with grass, and you'd see anywhere from 5 to 25 horses. Yeah. And I remember sitting in the back seat saying, "Oh, look, horses. I want to ride. When can I ride a horse? Can I have a horse?" Mm-hmm. So that is probably my earliest recollection is the Sunday drives and seeing the horses as we traveled through various parts of Northern California.
That's pretty cool. I wonder, when I was growing up, we used to do that too, like just drive around on Sundays. My dad had a Jeep Wrangler, and he would take the top off, and we would just drive around. I wonder if people do that anymore.
I don't know. With the price of fuel, they may not.
Right. I was just thinking that gas is a little bit too high for all that now.
Yeah. Back when we did that, gas was like 23 cents a gallon.
What?
Yeah. It was a ways ago. It was before the first gas crisis, the shortage. It was before the shortage in 1972-73.
Wow.
Yeah, we would drive around, and he had a big gas guzzler, and the family would pile in, and we just drive. That would be like the Sunday thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what led you into the career that you are in now?
Wanting to do something in the horse business. Mm-hmm. Because growing up, I rode, wanted to ride, went from Western to dressage to hunter jumper. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to do something that had to do with the horse business. And I would tell my parents, I want to be a jockey. Mm-hmm. Well, when I got, my mother would laugh, and she says, "No, you don't want to be a jockey." Mm-hmm. And when I was 12, I was 5'6" and 126 pounds, so I think being a jockey was out.
Yeah.
But I loved watching the races, mm-hmm. and was fortunate to be able to watch the Triple Crown when Secretariat won. And
nice.
That was, it was pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. You show that so casually.
I know, like that's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit older than most people think, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. So then after that, leaving California and coming to Houston, my mother found a barn where I could actually work and ride. So I worked cleaning stalls, feeding horses, grooming horses, packing up horses. And at that time, it was when people would rent horses to ride through the park. And so we would take people on guided trails around Herman Park in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the mid to late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And no one would recognize it now because the barn that used to be there, in basically right off of downtown Houston, right next to the Herman Park and the museum district, is now filled with multiple large, very fancy, really nice looking apartment complexes and duplexes, townhomes, things like that.
Yeah.
And you would never know that there was a huge barn with a huge covered arena and about 80 to 100 stalls.
Wow.
Right near downtown Houston.
Mm-hmm.
But those days are gone, and there aren't too many large barns in Houston, though there's still a lot of backyard horses in Houston for the areas that aren't zoned. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's always interesting. My parents were decidedly against me becoming a trainer because that was the next thing I wanted to do. If I can't be a jockey, I want to be a trainer.
Yeah.
And my dad was pretty vehemently against that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still of the malleable age where, what the parents said pretty much went. You didn't really buck the system. So I, got down to studying and they said, do something else and then board your horse and let somebody else take care of it. And then you go ride your horse and you go home and you go back to work. So I did that paradigm for a little while and still wasn't really happy. I mean, I had a great time in school and had a couple of different jobs and did a few other things that were interesting.
Right.
But it wasn't horses. And then one day I just kind of woke up and said I was done and I was going to do something else. And that something else turned out to be vet medicine. I think it was, I was, as it happens, an EMT trying to decide whether or not I wanted to go into the paramedic program.
Right.
And probably picked up one too many people off the road. I think this was a train and truck collision.
Oh no.
Yeah, and it was a slow moving train and a truck with a slightly inebriated driver. And I think that was the day I said, I'm done. I'm not interested in human medicine. I'm going to go to vet school.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about 2:00 in the morning.
It happens like that sometimes.
It happens like that, yeah. And so then I spent the next couple of years getting the courses that I needed to add to the degree that I'd already had in communications to get the prerequisites to go to vet school.
Mm-hmm.
And it took just keeping track of everything, going up to the school at Texas A&M and seeing what the requirements were and coming home and sitting down and writing everything out and making my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guess it actually worked out pretty well. I know people want to know how many times I had to apply. I only had to apply once.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the getting in was easy. It was the getting out that was more challenging.
The getting out.
Oh, yeah. You want to get out. You want to graduate.
Yeah.
Some people get out without graduating. And
I didn't even know that was an option.
Well, there are some people that decide, for whatever reason, that, after 2 years in vet school, they're like, yeah, this is not for me.
Right.
And, it's vet school, you're thinking, oh, I could have been a garbage collector and been way ahead because I wouldn't have these student loans and
Mm-hmm.
I might actually be making money. What was I thinking after your last final? But, you hang with friends and you go do something in the summer that gets you excited again and you go back to school and yeah, it's really, it's more challenging than people realize, but it's really fun, and you make relationships that you will have for a long time.
Right, right. So do you mind telling me kind of what age you were when you made this decision, when you, like, to go to vet school?
I was 28.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got hope.
You do not have to do high school, undergrad, vet school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that being an older student is beneficial for when you get out of vet school, because you have a different take on life and opportunities and general experiences that I think people that don't have work-life experience prior to vet medicine end up being a little bit surprised
Right.
at some of the things that they have to actually deal with.
Right. Right.
Because as much as vet medicine is about the animal, it's also about the people.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you think you're not a good people person, you eventually have to become a good people person.
Yep.
Because no dog, cat, horse, cow, pig, goat, or sheep will walk into a vet clinic and say, "I'm sick, fix me."
Yeah, and they also won't pay their bill.
Exactly. So you have to be able to talk to people and relate to their issues and help them out, and still give time to yourself to have a good work-life balance so that you don't burn yourself out.
Right. All of my mentors, kind of on my pre-vet track, have gone into vet school later. So, people are like, oh, are you going to apply? Are you going to apply? I kind of got a different perspective from them. Like, I want to work for it first. I want to kind of save some money. There's a lot of things, like, I got things to do. And I know once I come out of vet school, or my friends that have come out of vet school, they have to kind of hit the ground running because, they got the debt and they've got expectations, of them that they're just trying to, hustle and keep it moving. So
right.
I'm like, vet school's never going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. And actually, I believe in my class we had half a dozen people with master's degrees, and I think we had one person with a PhD, and I was like in the middle of my class in age, and there were multiples of people that were much older than I was.
Yeah. And
a lot of people that were very young. I think my class had one of the youngest people in school. He got in at 19, which is amazing.
Wow.
Exceedingly smart. And then we had, I think, someone who was like a grandma.
Wow.
And I think she started vet school at, I don't know if it was 48 or 52, something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, so age is just like in animals. Age isn't a disease, and it's the same with people. You can go to vet school as an older student. It can be a second or a third career.
Right. That is the truth. So, since, like, you have two kind of factors of your life that I am crazy interested in, what are some challenges that you have faced as a minority in either of those industries, as a veterinarian or in the horse industry?
So in the horse industry, I don't know if it was an obvious challenge to me, because I tend to like turn things off. If it doesn't fit into my narrow paradigm, it kind of is out there on the periphery, and I don't see it or hear it. And I know it's there,
Mm-hmm.
but it never, that aspect of it coming from outside, coming from other people, never bothered me. It was, for me, I just had so many people in my life because of the time period where I grew up that were always trying to protect me from, I guess, being hurt or getting my feelings hurt or whatever society was putting out back in the 70s and the 80s when I was really trying to ride a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the challenges probably came from family, of all places.
Yeah.
That were like, oh, you're still into horses? When are you going to stop doing that? It was, for them, seeing me do the horses was a fad.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with the exception of my mother, I never really got a whole lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably the biggest challenge was I was the only one out there.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you'd go to a horse show and it was me.
Yeah.
And my mother would hear people say things like, oh my God, she's such a good rider. Look how straight her back is. Her leg never moves.
Mm-hmm.
So I would get not compliments necessarily to my face, but my mother would overhear people say things during the time when she would go to the horse shows. But I would say that I didn't do a lot of horse showing because when I was younger, first of all, my parents weren't familiar with it, and some of the instructors I'd had over the years were not really into the hunter jumpers, which is what I wanted to do. So
right.
Everybody wanted me to do what they wanted me to do, but no one was really, I didn't really have the people around me that could help me get to do what I wanted to do until I was older, until after I was able to do it and work and
right.
cover the financial burden of it myself.
Right.
So, like, when I first started riding, it was Western, and I was just happy to be on a horse.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I saw someone on a horse, I don't even remember what color it was, I think a red. I don't even know if it was an Appaloosa or a quarter horser, but I have no idea because I was like 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in an English saddle, and he was doing something really interesting. He was like crawling all over this horse and trying to go from the horse's back and go around the horse's neck and get back on its back like an acrobat. And I'm like, I was watching him, and then he would ride the horse, and I told the riding instructor, can I ride like that? And she just looked at me and said, no. That's all I remember. I mean, she may have said other things, but the only thing I heard was no. And then I got to get on this big giant horse called Snowball that was really fuzzy and in a Western saddle, and walk and jog and lope around the arena,
mm-hmm.
which we did on Saturdays. And then other adventures that I had were, summer camp and boarding school. That's a whole nother story.
Oh, wow.
In which I got to ride quite a bit and do some really interesting and dangerous and maybe things that we're glad we didn't have social media back then, so no one knows about them.
There's no proof.
Yeah, but all of that was Western and bareback. But I will say that during my time at boarding school in Northern California, we got taken to a dressage show.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first experience seeing dressage, and it was amazingly interesting for me at that time. And so we all came back from the show, and we spent the next 2 or 3 months doing flying lead changes around the property between classes, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
So then at the end of that year, when we came back home, instead of going back to riding the Western horses, we found a woman who was teaching, that was leasing her horse. And so we went over to her property, and she had a big old Western quarter horse and more petite, I have no idea what it was, horse that looked like a light quarter horse or a thoroughbred cross or something. And she said, you would be better off on this horse, and I'll give you lessons. And so I would go out twice a week, and I would clean the paddocks for a lesson on Saturday. And I thought I knew how to ride because I was 10 years old and I've been riding horses, and I went to summer camp and I went to boarding school, and we were on all these horses, and so I thought I knew how to ride. And being a German duchess who had moved to Northern California from whatever situation her family was in, she decided that I was going to learn how to ride dressage, but that I needed to learn balance. And so she took my stirrups away and she took my reins away, and I had lunge lessons for like a year, and I got really good at sitting the trot and posting the trot and picking up a canter on a horse that was reluctant to listen to anything that my leg said.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to ride, and I may not have been the best rider, and compared to other people my age that might have been, showing, but I could sit pretty much any horse after that. That was
I bet. No stirrups.
Posting a trot for an hour with your arms out to the side like an airplane. On one trot.
Yeah.
So, and so we moved to Texas. I did that for 2 years. We moved to Texas, and I didn't think there was going to be any place to ride because Texas didn't have anything but Western horses and cowboys. And well, that's not quite true. And my mother found a place, and I stayed there for a few years, cleaning stalls and, of course, doing everything I had said earlier, grooming horses.
Yeah, in exchange for lessons?
Exchange for like a lesson or two. And then I got my first horse on Christmas when I was 12 or 13.
Oh, nice.
But that was my first horse, and it was a little sorrel quarter horse, and learned a lot, and then started looking at another hunter jumper barn that wasn't too far from where we lived, and rode there for about a year before they ended up selling and moving to San Antonio.
Oh my goodness.
So after that, my riding career pretty much ended until college. And I rode for, I guess, one semester in college. I was trying to ride and had the misfortune of slipping on ice in Washington, D.C. and breaking my leg.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. All these adventures, everything kind of keeping me from doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being able to ride the next semester after that. And, that was interesting, because they were using terminology that I had never heard before. Not that it wasn't correct, it's just I hadn't heard it before because of all the other people that I'd ridden with over the years. And so I rode there for a little bit, and during school, and then I think the second year in DC, I was just done with the cold.
Yeah.
Done with the cold, and decided Texas was probably an okay place to be, and zoomed back where the temperatures were a little bit warmer.
Yes, more manageable.
Yeah. And then started looking for places in the area where I could ride, and so that happened in, what year was that? I think that was 82 or 83. Got with the barn and did well. But I guess one of the things that started happening was was you would get other kids in whose parents had more money, and so they would get more attention. They would be able to go out horse hunting and get more expensive horses than you could afford. And I ended up having a really nice horse. He did really well on the local circuit. Probably did 1 or 2 A circuit shows with him, but ended up selling him, getting another horse, and then that one had a medical problem, and I showed up to the barn one day, and he unfortunately had died.
Oh no!
He got out of his stall and he died. I got a phone call, and it was sad. And that was probably like the first time I thought about vet medicine. Was when that had happened, because I wanted to know what happened, and I wanted to make sure that something like that didn't happen to anyone else. I was still in that naive, I can save them all.
Right.
I can help everyone, and and I try to help everyone that I can, but unfortunately we can't save them all. But after that, ended up getting another horse who was amazing. He was my buddy, and I actually took him to vet school with me.
Oh, nice.
Which was good, because you need something to keep you sane.
Yeah.
And he was an amazing horse, and he lived to the age of 32.
Oh, my goodness.
I got him as an 8-year-old, and he lived till 32, and he was just my best friend. So, but he helped me through vet school, because whenever you had a hard day, you could go out to the barn, and he was like, okay, let's go for a trail ride. And we would go.
That's precious.
Yeah. So I think everybody needs a little something to help them get through, whether it's, get through vet school, get through med school, get through nursing school, get through engineering, whatever. You need something fun to help you get through, and for me, it was the horses.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I have a 25-year-old, and he's a jerk. But he was...
Well, that's because he's 25.
I know. He was my childhood horse, and he has heaves, so he doesn't do anything. But he's just, like, I just go to feed him, and he's gotten to the point where he can swat his tail, like, with such precision that it hits me in the face, and I'm not even like that close to him, and I'm like, really? It's cold. There are no flies. Why did you just hit me?
Because I have 363-degree vision, and I knew exactly where you were, and I was giving you my opinion.
Right. He's such a turd, but I mean, we've been on many a trail, and he's gotten me out of many a sticky situation, so he just gets to live and eat hay, and until he doesn't want to anymore.
We all have those. I now have way too many horses, but that's okay. I enjoy them.
How many do you have?
I have 6.
Okay, well, yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot. It's a few. I don't have time to ride 6. Actually, one of them, as I said earlier, is my son's pony.
Right.
And one of them was supposed to be my amateur owner jumper, and life happens, and basically a big pasture pet, and occasionally I get him going. I brought in a clinician a few times to the area, and had really good clinics and I thought I was going to get going. I kept giving myself a reason to get back on and work and ride, and brought in the clinician and had really good rides, and then after the last time we did the clinic, it was like, I look up and it's a year and a half later, and I've done nothing with him.
It happens. Life just blinks before your eyes.
Life happens. You have to work. You have to go to gymnastics meets. You have to, take care of the other horses.
Yeah. are you the veterinarian for one of the, like, production, like the horse production thing? I can't even remember what it's called.
Are you talking about
like they did the jousting?
The joust horses? Yeah. So
Yeah.
the Texas Renaissance Festival
Yeah.
is the biggest Renaissance festival in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And it is currently going on right now.
Oh, wow.
And I did their vet work from about 2005 up until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I'm not doing it was because I started doing something else that really started taking up a lot of my time and didn't allow me to spend the amount of time that I would spend up there. I'd be up there every weekend in October and November, and I love the joust horses. They're just amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing horses. Usually, they're not really bred for the joust. It's usually horses that are acquired from people or situations that the owners don't want them anymore, and for whatever reason, or they have some issue that the owners weren't willing to address. And so a lot of the joust horses for this particular company, which is the original joust company in the country, the Hanlon Lee's Action Theater, is the original joust company, and all other joust companies hail from them.
Right.
And I did the vet work for those horses for years, and would spent a lot of time up there in October and November every year, and it's going on right now, and they're having a great joust.
That's super cool. So do you have like a primary focus as far as what you practice in?
I do mostly backyard horses. I've gone from doing a lot of show horses to doing the backyard horses, and it flip-flops a lot just depending on the year. Sometimes I end up doing a lot of show horses. I can't really tell why it changes, but I like the backyard clients.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have show horses that they keep at home. And some people just have horses because they like to see them eating grass in the pasture.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, barrel racers. I've got a couple of clients that breed reining horses. I've got some hunter jumper people. I've got some dressage people. You name it, I've got a little bit of everything.
That's nice.
And it makes it interesting. I used to have some off-track race horses, but don't really have that much anymore since most of the race horses go to Louisiana. And let's see, that's about it.
So do you own your practice?
I do. I am ambulatory. I've worked for a year for someone else, and he did a lot of everything. So I learned a lot of cow medicine and goat medicine that I don't use, and I'm okay with that most of the time. And I've done a lot of small animal medicine, and which is kind of a backup for me. I did have to have knee surgery once, multiples of years ago, and the horses didn't like the crutches.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
And so I did relief work a lot in that period where I couldn't walk and I had to be on crutches.
Right.
And then I was ambulatory, mobile, solo practitioner for several years, and then a friend of mine wanted to build a clinic and go into practice and just needed a partner, and so we talked about it for a while, and I built a mixed animal practice that did very well. And then she wanted to be on her own and do it by herself, and so I ended up leaving there and selling her my share of the practice, and going back ambulatory again. A lot of interesting stories that we could probably talk about for hours, but
I know I'm having to restrain myself from asking you every single question.
Let me not go in that direction, because I'm really bad at going on tangents and forgetting what the original question was. And at that point, I decided I didn't really want to do it again. I didn't want to build something again that I had to babysit, that I had to make sure someone was at the front desk and answering the phone.
Right.
And at that time, my son was 6 months old, 8 months old, and I'd have to go back and look at the dates to give exact ages. But anyway, he was less than a year. And so went out on my own again and ended up having to rebuild the ambulatory practice, which was fine. And then we ended up moving I lived in the Missouri City area, southwest Houston, Missouri City. Ended up moving from there and found some property in Needville that my husband was very keen on. And after much discussion, we elected to get this property. And it's been an adventure ever since. And I'm still ambulatory, and it gives me a lot more flexibility.
Right. Do you have your horses on your property?
Yeah, so they're out the kitchen. You can look out the kitchen window and see them. Yeah,
that's nice.
Which is great, because they tell me when breakfast is late and they start yelling at me.
Yep.
But being ambulatory again has allowed me some flexibility and being able to raise and really participate in the growing up of my son, as opposed to dropping him off at daycare, sending him to school for hours, and I only see him in the evening.
Right.
So we did that for a bit. I homeschool now. So my days are interesting. And when I'm not homeschooling, taking care of my own horses, which I don't get to do as much because I'm taking care of someone else's horses, and taking care of someone else's horses. And, taking my son to gym, where he spends 5 hours a day.
Wow.
And then taking care of the property. And on top of that, the one thing I didn't say about the vet medicine is I am on the state board of veterinary medical examiners.
Wow.
So that is my added thing that keeps me from doing a whole bunch of other things, which is one of the reasons I had to give up the my time at the Texas Renaissance Festival and with the jousters, just because it was just too much on my plate.
Yeah.
So it's quite full.
That tends to be the same sentiment between, all veterinary professionals having a full plate. So,
So I do know that one part of your question that you'd asked earlier was about some of the challenges in vet medicine for someone who is Black or African American or whatever, and I didn't really address that.
Go ahead.
And as I said, I didn't have any issues getting in. It was a little bit more challenging getting out. But I did. There were some interesting, funny situations, and I don't know if it's funny ha-ha or funny strange.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the first interesting incident was that I was having a problem in one of my classes, and it turned out later we discovered that I was all but, I won't say blind as a bat, but looking through microscopes gave me headaches, severe headaches, because I obviously needed glasses and never knew it. But I went to the instructor to ask for help, and he wanted to know what other classes I was failing besides his. I'm like, well, all right then. So he proceeded to help one of my classmates who had also showed up at his office and ignored me. And of course, I wasn't failing anything else. I was actually acing everything else. And to the point where I think I blew the curve in the physiology.
Yeah.
So I was pretty confident with everything else, but I ended up, I think that was microbiology.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was a micro or a pathology class.
Anatomy,
yeah.
And so I ended up getting some help from one of the other microscopic anatomy professors, and I spent basically from midterm through the end of the year working and learning stuff that most people had probably learned when they did the biomedical science courses, and ended up acing all the exams after that and usually getting all the bonus points, and did fine. So that was one interesting incident.
Yeah.
I think this one's really funny. Or you might not think it's funny. I was.
Do share.
I don't even know, was I amazed or appalled or surprised? It's like, what do you say to this? So I'm sitting in the library, and I guess it was sometime during my second year, and one of my classmates came up while I was sitting in the library and said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "How did you get here?"
Oh.
I said, "I'm sorry, what?" He said, "Well, you must be incredibly smart, and I just wanted to know how you got here, because all the other black people that we know, they're not really smart. They're just like the janitors and the maids and whatever." And I just kind of looked at him, and my jaw dropped, and I just didn't know what to say.
I wouldn't have known what to say either.
And
I would have said a whole bunch of stuff.
I was like, I don't know. Most of the black people I know are very intelligent.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry. How can they not be? I guess I come from a family of very intelligent people, and last time I checked, most of them were black. My dad has a PhD in mathematics from Berkeley.
Yeah, I would have lit that library up.
And my mother has a master's in music from the Eastman School of Music.
Mm-hmm.
And you've never met a smart black person in your life.
Right.
And that came out of the mouth of one of my classmates.
That's amazing.
Around the year 1992.
Wow.
Yeah, so, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And it was so shocking to me that at some point, I mentioned that to a couple of my classmates. I'm like, can you believe that this particular person in our class said this to me? They looked at me and they were shocked. Of course, I'm the only black person in the entire vet school.
Right.
So it wasn't that they didn't know that there were people around. It's just that I was it.
Yeah.
And I had an instructor, another interesting thing. I had a lot of little interesting things that just kind of take you by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you say? You're not going to say anything ugly.
Yeah.
When you're surrounded by people. And I don't think fast enough to say ugly things. One of the instructors, and I think this was also in microanatomy, or maybe it was I think it was embryology, so it's second year. And he wasn't being mean. It was just like, it's that lack of familiarity, because I've never been around people that don't look like me. I really don't know how to speak to them.
Right.
Kind of thing. And so this instructor was talking about the number of vertebrae in the spine of mammals. And so he was saying how many humans have versus how many cats and dogs have versus how many horses have. And then he looked at me out of the blue, and we're all sitting around kind of leaning in, listening to him. And all of a sudden, he kind of takes both hands, and he, when you're trying to make a point and your hands come down, like you're throwing your hands at someone trying to make a point.
Yeah. So
he leans in and says, except for black people, and they have an extra vertebra.
Oh, okay.
I was like, and like he leans in towards me when he's saying this, and it makes me sit back going, oh, wow, like you just kind of jumped at me.
What in the world?
What do you say to that when you're surrounded by your other 113 classmates?
Wow.
And there's I probably have another half dozen just like that.
Just little microaggressions, I think they term it now.
Yeah, and a couple of them may have been just outright ugly, and some of them are just like, we've never been around black people and we don't know how to talk to them. I'm like, we're just people, talk to us like you talk to everyone else.
Right.
And were there a couple of ugly incidents? Yeah, but I get my blinders on. It irritates me for a minute, and then I go on because I can't worry about them. I have to worry about where I'm going, and they're not going to do anything in class. They're not going to teach anything wrong to keep you from graduating.
Right.
So just, put your head down, keep going, smile. Try not to be grumpy.
Yeah.
And get on with your life.
Yeah.
So I would say that in the riding, my parents were protecting me from what they grew up with. Because my parents are that age that they grew up seeing all of it, all of the stuff from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s.
Civil rights era.
Yeah. And they wanted to protect me from it, so they didn't want me to be in the business. Because they weren't familiar with anyone that was in the business. And certainly there weren't any black people in the horse industry the way I wanted to be in it that they ever saw or knew of. Or they weren't really familiar with the industry anyway. As far as vet medicine, those little incidences, they're just blips.
Yeah.
And I guess people might be more reactionary now, or maybe they're not, because things have changed. Things have changed a lot, but the more they've changed, the more they've stayed the same,
Yeah.
It's there, but it's different. And I just can't worry about it. And as far as vet medicine and how people have responded to me since I've been out, again, you still have those little incidences, and a couple of the nasty things never got said to my face, but I would hear about it secondhand.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but you just, unlike some of my colleagues, I have to be very good. And just like in the workspace that a lot of people of color are familiar with. You can't just be good. You have to be better to be considered as good or equal.
Yeah, you got to work twice as hard.
It's the same in vet medicine.
Mm-hmm.
From what I have recognized. Now, once people know you, it's not an issue. And I've been out long enough where I don't really have any of those issues. But early on, I had those issues.
Yeah.
And if I have those issues now, I just ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
And hand them the invoice and go on.
You gonna take this invoice?
Yeah, well, they'll take that because they want you to come back in case they have another problem.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, it's about the horses or whatever particular animal I've been asked to work on.
Yeah.
But my preference, of course, is the horses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Overall, I've help a lot of people, and they're the same people that are out there in all the other industries that you might work with. It's just vet medicine versus working. Well, I won't say working in retail. You have to deal with a lot more people there.
Oh yeah.
You come across the same
type of people.
Types of people and the same types of situations.
Right. Well, I guess my last question, since, mental health in veterinary medicine mental health period is a big topic right now, kind of in the media, but especially with veterinary medicine. I know the job can be stressful. I mean, I work at an animal hospital, so I understand the stresses of the job. What do you do to kind of combat that, the compassion fatigue, dealing with difficult clients? I mean, hopefully more of them are not. But what do you do to kind of stay on the more positive end of kind of this broad spectrum of mental health that's being discussed nowadays?
Wow. I guess I do a lot. I can honestly say I've probably gotten burned out 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And even doing something different for a month or 2 is enough to help you get a new perspective on what you're doing. And you have to, I guess for everyone, it's a little bit different. Like, what's causing the burnout? Are you burned out because you're working all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to work a little bit less.
Yeah.
And take care of yourself. Are you burned out because people aren't paying you? Well, it's better to not do the work and not get paid than to do the work and not get paid.
Yeah.
So you might need to decide you're going to make the changes you need to do to relieve yourself of the people that are taking your time and your energy and not compensating you for that.
Yep.
And, being a solo practitioner, I can fire my clients. They can fire me anytime, and, it happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But as a practitioner, I can do the same thing. I don't have to work for someone. I am not required to agree to go and work for someone. And if I think someone is difficult or is going to try to emotionally blackmail me, I can't work for them.
Yeah.
The other thing is I've gotten to where I shoot straight from the hip. I think I'm very realistic, and I try to be compassionate, but also be very honest with people. I tell them what their options are and let them make that decision, and don't try to get involved in their decision making outside of giving them, this is
just
how
the
it
information
could work out for the best. This is how it could go badly. This is what the cost is, and I can't tell you whether or not I would do that for my own animal, but this is what this is the option that you have for your animal, and not take it personally. You, like I said earlier on, you can't save them all.
Right.
You can try.
Right.
But, if your mental angst is coming from the feeling that you're not saving enough animals, you're gonna have to let that God complex go.
Right.
Because some of them you're not gonna save all of them, no matter how much money you throw at them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them will live despite everything you do. They're going to live.
Yep.
So you have to let that go. As far as compassion fatigue, I don't. That's really a hard one. That is definitely a personal. How do I manage? And for me, I'm so busy. I do have some cases that can get sad, but I'm busy enough in my life that that medicine isn't my whole life. It's something I do, and when I do it, I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't define me. It doesn't define who I am.
Right.
I'm a mom. I'm a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm an equestrian, except I haven't been riding recently.
That's okay.
My horse is getting a round pen and they work.
That's okay.
But and I work out a lot. We've got this great group in Texas and in the Houston area called Camp Gladiator. And,
yeah.
They're pretty awesome, and we do these community workouts, and it's very uplifting to be around people that are like-minded from totally different walks of life that are in it to get better physically and build a community. Yeah. And so that works. And then of course my family is fairly close, and I spend time with my sister and her kids, and the people at the gym where my son is on the gymnastics team. They're family, and people that my son homeschools with, they are becoming family. So I think you just have to put yourself in position to have more going on in your life than just vet medicine. Right. And that's how you keep yourself sane. Mm-hmm. And don't try not to let other people's, and you can be sad for people, but you can't let other people's emotions about their animals affect you. And I don't know how to tell you not to do that, but I think having these other groups that you participate in is a good start, whatever those groups are. Exercise is great. Mm-hmm. The more you exercise, the more physically fit you are, the better you're going to be. And then, of course, however you feel about spirituality, that also helps too. Yeah. Awesome. And I don't know.
That was a great response.
That's kind of how it goes for me, and that doesn't mean I won't get burned out. I get tired of things and want to go do something else for a while, especially when it's really hot or really cold. Yeah. But I have enough variety that helps, and occasionally I'll go. I've got a client with some interesting animals, and I'll go do something really interesting, like play with the camel or the llama or something that's not a horse, and then I'm like, oh, that was fun. Let me go back to the horse. My comfort zone is the horse.
Yes. That's what I was doing too, working in small animal. I would go with a mobile small camelid practice on the weekends, and I'm like, I hate cats and dogs right now, but this llama and then this goat, I'm like, okay, I just had to catch a goat flying through the air. Let me just deal with cats and dogs. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
It's all about balance.
Yeah. And I've got a couple of friends friends that they're always like, I'm going out of town. Can you come work in my practice for me? And really, okay, I can do it, but I can't do it 2 days in a row because then I'd be really unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like being out. I love being outside, except for when it's really, really cold. Then you'll hear me complain. But I really enjoy the outdoor life and the outdoor activity and being with the horses outside as opposed to the dogs and cats inside. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you have talked about today. I'm really happy that we got a chance to talk to you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Young Black Equestrians, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for updates. Listen, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. See you next time.